Hi, thank you so much, Suda, and also to Renee and Don and to all of PeaceGeeks for this great opportunity to speak to this audience. And also, you've been such a good support over the years. I just wanted to start out by by saying thanks. Um, so I know we're running late, so I'll try to make this short and sweet. And if anyone has questions, then you are more than welcome to ask them. There's a couple topics that I just wanted to cover, mostly about the background and how we started, and to give you a look at kind of what our work is and where we're going in the future. So. HarrassMap was founded in 2010, and our mission is to change the social acceptability of sexual harassment and sexual assault in Egypt. For the past decade, sexual harassment and assault in Egypt has been so extreme that that it's hard to do anything without putting yourself at risk if you're a woman or even another group like children or LGBTQ. Some men even face this problem, and it started to really infect every aspect of life. UN Women funded a study a couple years ago that said 99.3% of women in Egypt have experienced sexual harassment or assault. And that covers everything from catcalling and stalking to groping and mob attacks or group harassment, indecent exposure, phone stalking, internet stalking, everything. And a lot of people say that the worst part of all of this, I mean, the harassment and assault is terrible. But what makes it worse, I think, is that no one helps you. When something like this happens to you, and it happens all the time, usually, police don't help, bystanders don't help. A lot of times, if you even tell people what's happening to you, they blame you or they find some excuse for the harasser, and you end up being kind of, you feel alone and isolated and even sometimes attacked further if you speak out about this. So what happens a lot of times is that women more and more are choosing to avoid situations that they'll be exposed to harassment and assault, which means choosing to avoid being in the public space. So that then impacts women's access to education, to work, to healthcare, to political participation, and general engagement in the public sphere. So in 2010, the HarrassMap co-founders and I, there are four of us, me, Inji Hoslan, Amal Fahmi, and Sausan Ged. We didn't actually, we didn't plan on starting an organization, but we saw this problem that wasn't being addressed effectively at the time, in our opinion, and we had to do something. We couldn't just stay silent. So we started to kind of draw on our experience and look at the issue of harassment and assault. And what we noticed was that years ago, it didn't used to be as extreme as it is now. Like, older people that we talked to would talk like very proudly about how they used to walk in the streets safely. It didn't matter what time of day or what time of night. It didn't matter what they were wearing. It didn't matter what neighborhood they were in. And if they got harassed, because of course sexual harassment and sexual assault happens everywhere to some extent, like it's something that exists around the globe. But people said that in those times, the harassers weren't allowed to just do whatever they wanted and get away with it and be supported by the public, but rather they would be ridiculed by bystanders in the street and witnesses. And sometimes there's a story where they would even like chase harassers and shave their heads. And everyone knew that like harassers had like people with their heads shaved were harassers and they had been caught, and then they would get made fun of, and everyone would know. So these are like stories people talked about a lot, and they're really well known. And that's obviously not how it is today. And so we were looking for a way to kind of to re-engage the public in this kind of social norm setting that made harassment unacceptable in society, like let alone the law or the police or the top-down ways, but just not socially accepted. And actually, we had seen from some of our work before we started HarrassMap that when there was more public pressure about this issue in the media and with NGOs and people talking about this topic in public, police enforcement, lawmakers, and like others, like top-down people, like people in the government, people who have like policy control, they actually responded without any like advocacy outreach, without any special like programs addressing policy or addressing police or addressing anything. They responded to just like the general social pressure that people weren't accepting this situation where harassment was rampant anymore. And we had higher police enforcement. We had, lawmakers drafting laws. Several groups of lawmakers drafted laws, and a court case. The first court case won, and this was in 2008. But after that, the public pressure, like the public engagement, died down, and so the public pressure died down, and we saw that not much was really moving forward on this issue anymore, and it was actually kind of going back. And by the time we had launched HarrassMap, most people didn't even remember that these things happened, that there was a successful court case, that there were law drafts, that this was an issue that was being confronted at one point in time. So a volunteer came to me and told me about Ushahidi and Frontline SMS and how these platforms can be used to collect and map anonymous reports for many issues, but for sexual harassment and assault in particular. And so I thought this would be great as a way to kind of re-engage the public and revitalize this public movement against sexual harassment that had been more productive than any other approaches like top-down advocacy that were being done at the time. So when this volunteer came to me, his name's Justin, and HarrassMap didn't exist, and I didn't particularly want to like start anything. So I kind of wrote it up and sent it to the established NGOs that were working on this issue. And unfortunately, none of them were interested in it. So it was then after that that I kind of got together some friends and we decided to start HarrassMap. So this is the background of what was going on at the time, and what the context was like. So we decided that what was missing in addressing this issue was mobilizing the society to change the social norm that allows harassers to act with impunity and no fear of any consequences, social or legal, and hoping that this social pressure will in turn encourage the police to better enforce anti-sexual harassment laws, encourage lawmakers to make better laws, encourage like more of the structural things, but start from the bottom by discouraging harassers from acting on the streets when it happens. So the technology that we use to address it is Ushahidi and Frontline SMS, and because this is organized by PeaceGeeks, I'm assuming that everyone knows what these platforms are, but it's basically an anonymous reporting system that we use to give victims a way to speak out safely and connect them to support. So people could send reports by our website, by Twitter, by email, by mobile phone SMS. Now we have it hooked up to Facebook, and we don't have an app actually, but now that smartphones are getting more popular in Egypt, we're planning on making one. So there's a number of ways people can make reports, but it's anonymous, and so it gives them like the safe space. Then these reports, we can use them to kind of put people in direct contact with services that already exist. HarrassMap doesn't provide these services, but there are other NGOs that provide legal assistance, psychological assistance, self-defense classes, things like this. But it's hard to get in touch with them, so we try and spread awareness of their contact information. And we also use the reporting data and the map in our public campaigns and in our offline work in communities. And this offline work is definitely kind of based on the reporting system, but it's the bigger part of what we do. Most of what we do is offline, but it's supported by and working together with the tech. So we have three main programs or units. The Community Outreach or Community Mobilization Unit trains volunteer groups to target streets in their own neighborhood. And the volunteers go around and ask bystanders to be watchful and speak up against harassers. So we're hoping to gain like a critical mass of people who are having this zero tolerance attitude for sexual harassment in neighborhoods, and hoping that, you know, this kind of gets us to a tipping point in the block or the street or the neighborhood or the town where harassment isn't accepted anymore. So the next unit is our Safe Areas and Safe Schools and Universities program, and this recruits national and community level businesses, cafes, shops, community centers, schools, universities, basically any institution to become Safe Areas partners and implement our anti-sexual harassment policy, and we help them and train them and support them in this. Our Marketing and Communications unit, it runs public campaigns using the facts that we get from the reports on the street to fight stereotypes and to convince people to take action against sexual harassment. So they also asked me to talk a little bit about challenges that we faced and what's happening next. They just told me I only have like 1 minute left. And there's a lot of challenges. So I'll just go down through some of them really quickly, and then if anyone has questions, we can talk more about it sometime. So one of the biggest challenges is that the issue of sexual harassment has been politicized. So we are constantly having to analyze our messaging and our approach and trying to be effective and work around resistance that comes up to different approaches and messaging. Our reporting and mapping system started out being a really good complement to our work on the streets, but lately it's been not that effective. When we present people with the reports that we get, people dismiss them now, and before they used to be really surprised and they inspire people to change this issue in their daily lives. But now people ignore it more, and so we're looking for a better way to use the technology. Being a volunteer-based organization is always challenging, especially when the environment is unstable. We had a revolution, we had a military coup, we had a lot of changes that have been happening in the past couple years, and it's risky for volunteers to work in the streets. It's hard to count on people's attendance. It's just difficult. Balancing our volunteers' enthusiasm for addressing this issue and the things they want to take on with our capacity, and establishing like a healthy, reasonable workload that doesn't kill us and make us completely exhausted and useless. And also the data, when we first started, we didn't expect to use this data in like a formal way. We expected it to just, the reporting system was to give people a way to speak safely, but But then later we decided this is some interesting stuff and we want to kind of see what it can tell us. So we tried to analyze it, and it was really, really messy. So that was a big challenge that we dealt with for a year, and we're still dealing with it.